Joining us now, the continued decline in capital inflow into Nigeria has become a major concern for the economy, particularly as it is negatively affecting the foreign exchange market and investment climate. According to a recent report made public by the National Bureau of Statistics, total capital inflow into Nigeria declined by 20.5% year-on-year to $5.33 billion in 2022 from the $6.7 billion recorded in 2021. The plunge in total capital inflow can further be attributed to the severe dollar shortage in the country, which has deterred foreign companies from expanding in the largest economy in Africa due to the rates of insecurity and violence, which is a phenomenon that has continued to be on the rise in recent years. As this report has shown that Nigeria is it's no longer the beautiful bride for many investors who are already taking advantage of the friendly economic growth in other African countries. Now, to give us more insight into this development, and of course, we have a chart way, or how to have a way forward for this report, is a tax manager and economist at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Abiodun Kaudiali. He joins us virtually now. Thank you for your time, for coming on board, Mr. Kaudiali. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Yeah. So let's start from, what's your position on this? Looking at this loss, what are the factors that contributed to this loss? Let's start from there.
Okay. Yeah. So in my own point of view, there are basically pull factors and push factors that can attract capital importation or capital inflows, right? In terms of the foreign direct investments, the foreign portfolio investment, as well as the other incomes, right? So I believe that a reason for this decline that we've seen, it could be attributable more to the push factors, right? So we've seen situations whereby there's been issues that have to do with security, right? And security basically impacts on the foreign direct investment, which has been on a decline significantly, right? So the figures we have are currently one of the lowest ever since 2013. The figure of foreign direct investment was exactly 9% of total capital importation in the year 2022. And we've always had these issues with security concerns, whereby a lot of investors who probably want to set up in Nigeria, due to some of the interesting factors of Nigeria being a very good destination in terms of population, right? Nigeria has the market, and a lot of investors are always willing to come and do business. But push factors such as the insecurity challenges, which we've seen increasing, right, is one source of concern. It's a big source of concern to the extent whereby you hear of news reports that there are challenges with insecurity in a particular region of Nigeria, and the mindset or the concept that is being developed, or the perception that is being developed by foreigners, is that it is spreading across the entire country, right? So this is one of the big things that needs to be addressed. There are other factors that impact on the economy, factors such as policy inconsistency, right? We've had policies whereby the federal government would state that it intends to do a particular thing, then all of a sudden it changes its mind, right? And probably due to lack of political will. If I give you a good example, the Petroleum Industry Act, which was signed into law in 2021, we've seen situations whereby not all of that act has been fully implemented by the government. So that's another one. Then you have the issue, like you said in your introduction, issues dealing with the exchange rate inconsistencies, right? The issue of capital controls due to the rapid decline, right, in the amount of inflows and Nigeria's challenges with its with crude oil production, which is our major forex earner. We've seen situations whereby the monetary authority is trying its best to try and curtail the amount of outflows. So these capital controls is also a source of concern. And you've seen in the news media reports about foreign airlines complaining about just 400.
Oh dear. I mean, okay. Are you still there, Abiodun? Okay. Okay, I wanted to quickly, come in with this question. So, talk to us about how this decline of the FDI affects Nigeria's ability to compete globally and attract talent from other countries. And secondly, we also need to look at the potential consequences if Nigeria continues to lose FDI at its current rate. And of course, what step can be taken to mitigate this development?
Thank you, Frank. That's a very good question. So if you consider that most nations are competing globally for foreign direct investment, almost all nations, especially in the developing nations, right, that are in need of these investments. So some of the benefits that foreign direct investments actually provide is that it gives the room for development, basically, right? Development in living standards, because by the time you have this investment coming into your country, they kind of support most of the government spending, government expenditure. If you look at the current budget expenditure for Nigeria for the year 2023, we're talking about 21.8 trillion. There is a deficit of about 10.8 trillion. Now, the question is, where is the government going to source this revenue? It is able to source this revenue from things such as foreign direct investment. When these multinationals come into the country, they then give jobs, right? Jobs to a lot of the population, skilled workers, right? And if you look at Nigeria's unemployment rate, which the last figure we had as at 2020, I think that's Q3 2020, was somewhere within the range of 33.3%, which is one of the highest in the world, right? So foreign direct investment helps in providing jobs. It helps in boosting revenues, right? And it helps in also providing infrastructure. Right, most of these foreign direct investments, by the time these multinationals come into the country, they also invest in critical infrastructure. So all these things are a plus, right, to any government of any nation. Now, if you also consider the aspect of exchange rates, right? Nigeria needs forex. A lot of our concerns, right, which manufacturers are having currently, producers are having, has to do with forex issues. Forex is scarce right now, which is also a source of the capital control. So if Nigeria is able to bring in, attract all these foreign investments, you will see to a large extent that most of these macroeconomic challenges are being addressed. So what is my own thought on what Nigeria can do right now? I think Nigeria can actually go into some of its policies that are a bit harsh and are chasing away, pushing away most of these MNCs. You know, we've heard of reports of some of these multinational companies exiting the country due to the hardship challenges they are currently facing. You've heard of ShopRite, for instance, exiting Nigeria, and other multinationals going to neighboring countries as a result of the ease of doing business in those nations. So if Nigeria is able to address these challenges that have to do with ease of doing business, it will to a large extent help in solving most of these problems. Those are my take on this.
There's a big conversation within economies, business community with regards to policy expectations of the incoming administration and all that. We've seen, quite like you talked about, we've seen policy consistency in this administration. So for those of you who are within the business community, what are your expectations with regards to attracting foreign direct investment? I mean, your expectation from the incoming government, setting agenda in terms of promoting talent, attracting foreign direct investment, and a whole lot of collaborations so as to create a friendly environment.
Okay, so thanks, Frank, for that question. My expectation has to do with creating an enabling environment. If you discuss with most businesses in the country and those who want to come into the country, one of their key concerns, apart from issues of capital control, has to do with the ease of doing business, right? You've heard of a lot of these chief executives of multinational companies complaining that it's very difficult to do business in Nigeria. And some of them have to do with regulatory bottlenecks. Bottlenecks, basically, when it comes to you wanting to establish your business, you wanting to pay taxes. Businesses find it difficult, right? Just find it difficult doing business in Nigeria. So addressing these issues is going to be one of the key concerns. So I'm sure you, like your last guest spoke, Dr. Muda Yusuf, right? With respect to inflation, you have situations where multinational organizations are actually advising that Nigeria raises interest rates in order to curtail inflationary tendencies, right? But the thing which most analysts have actually said is that it's not necessarily an issue of monetary interest rates, right? There is more that needs to be done from the fiscal side, from the regulatory side, right? And this has to do with creating that enabling environment. If you can solve that to a large extent, that will help. The Business Facilitation Act, which was actually signed into law on Valentine's Day, which we could say is probably a love gift to Nigeria, to a reasonable extent helps to put in place some of the measures that have been introduced by the current administration, such measures such as the service level agreement, whereby you have MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, who to some extent actually stall business for the private sector. The executive orders that were signed by this current administration was aimed at ensuring if there is any delay in granting approvals from ministries, departments, and agencies, as long as timelines have been communicated and those timelines are met without any objection to submissions by private organizations, these requirements that are being, these approvals should be deemed as gotten, as obtained. These are some of the things that were introduced by this current administration under an executive order, but they weren't fully implemented as a result of MDAs not taking this thing serious. So the Business Facilitation Act has been signed into law, and it is expected that it will, to a large extent, help the incoming administration, right? So the addition of these things, creating an enabling Business Facilitation Act, and actually important.
Okay. Okay. I think there's a bit of a distortion in the flow of conversation there. But I wanted to ask, how soon do you think we can begin to see the impact of that Business Facilitation Act, on the business, Nigerian business landscape? Can you hear me, Abiodun? I'm not sure if Abiodun can hear me, but I wanted to know his thought about how soon do we begin to see it reflected on the Nigerian business landscape, whether, since it's not been tested before now, just about 2 months ago, that been signed into law. So Abiodun, yes, you're here now. So talk to us about that.
Okay, so the one thing I wanted to say, Frank, is that in Nigeria we come up with lots of policies, but implementing it seems to be the challenge, right? So I think, in my own view, it's been said that the incoming administration is one that has been able to prove itself in terms of at the governorship level, in terms of Lagos State. So it's expected that if he's able, that's the incoming president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if he's able to still put his foot down and ensure that MDAs actually implement most of these policies, it will to a large extent help. And right from the time that he was actually declared as the president-elect, we've heard reports about the business community in the international world. There's been positive sentiment, right? So I think this would simply depend on the political will of the incoming administration. And as long as they are able to put in place punitive measures for any agency that actually goes against most of these laws. If we're able to see them make examples of most of these agencies that go against these laws, it will, to a reasonable extent, instill that trust, that confidence. So I think it all boils down to political will. That's what I could say.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That question.
Okay. Two questions quickly. One, let's talk about the role of Nigeria's diaspora community, the role they can play in attracting or supporting the country's economy with regards to foreign direct investment. That's one. Two, you talked about some of the businesses, the big names. You mentioned ShopRite and the likes. You talked about the fact that some of them are actually migrating. Do you think they are coming back? Should some of the issues you pointed out with regards to, a poor policy, weak policies, if those have been addressed, do you think they are coming back? If they're not coming back, how much is the country losing by some of these companies migrating from the country?
All right, thank you very much, Frank. Those are two very good questions. The first one, with respect to diaspora remittances. Diaspora remittances actually serve as one of the largest remittances source of foreign exchange for Nigeria, right? I think there was a particular point in time when it was reported that Nigeria was earning about $20 billion from diaspora remittances. Now, we have lots of Nigerians abroad migrating due to economic challenges here, or some are actually going to school over there in other developed nations, and they do acquire jobs over there, right? So the continuous transfer of such funds to dependents, right in Nigeria, it to a large extent helps, and it's one of the largest sources of our foreign portfolio investment. It's one of the largest source of our inflows, basically. And Nigeria serves as, I think Nigeria is within the top 7 countries that is sending lots of remittances coming from diaspora remittances. To a large extent, it does serve a big buffer for Nigeria in terms of our foreign exchange reserves. Then to your second question, with respect to most of these multinational companies that have exited due to challenges or the harshness of business environment, infrastructure, and as well as other issues in Nigeria, do I see them coming back in the nearest future? I think the answer will be yes, because one thing we must always keep in mind is that Nigeria is actually a good market, right? Nigeria is a destination for most multinationals and most businesses. They see potential in Nigeria. Right. So I do believe in the nearest future that as long as we've gotten things right in terms of the way we tax, in terms of our regulatory bodies, as well as in terms of our infrastructure, I do see them coming back in the nearest future, because they ignoring Nigeria would be to their own detriment. That's if we have everything in place. But if we don't, I mean, it's just going to be the way it has always been.
Well, I think we'll have to leave it there. I mean, I love the last part where you said it's going to be to their own detriment, looking at the opportunities in Nigeria market. Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, Abiodun Kaudi Ali, Economist and Tax Manager at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Thank you for coming on board. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Yeah. You've been watching Business Breakfast coming to you live from us. This is still to come after the break. Brent crude futures traded lower today at 0.05% to sell at $86.27 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures declined by 0.02%. I'll bring you details in a moment. Please stay with us.